Thank you for coming, mother-in-law. What did you hear from Brian? I asked. He said he was going on a business trip for 2 weeks. It was sudden, she replied. That's when it hit me. Brian, an illustrator who preferred working from home, planned a sudden business trip. It didn't add up. Unless something significant arose, he wouldn't leave, even for local meetings. My mind raced with possibilities, including the unsettling thought that he might be cheating on me. I know for a fact that our company doesn't arrange meetings requiring business trips. How? Well, it's simple. I work there too, as an administrative staff member. Are you okay? You look pale. Are you feeling unwell? My mother-in-law asked, concern etched on her face. Our company wouldn't send Brian on a business trip. That's the job of the sales team. I'm an admin, so I don't go on business trips either, I explained, watching her reaction. Her puzzled expression spoke volumes. In other words, Brian lied. It had been a week since his unexplained absence and there was no official notification. I couldn't help but wonder where he really was. He left his injured wife in the hospital and lied to me. Did Brian tell you where he was going on business? I inquired. Come to think of it, he mentioned staying in a hotel in Miami arranged by the company, my mother-in-law replied, pulling up the hotel's website on her smartphone. As I glanced at the screen, my heart sank. It was the same hotel where we celebrated our wedding anniversary, a place far too extravagant for a company-funded trip. A throbbing headache began to surface, fueled by the realization of Brian's sloppy alibi. Mother-in-law, this is difficult to say, but Brian might be cheating, I confessed. What? Brian? Her disbelief echoed in the room. But this does seem suspicious, she conceded, her expression shifting. Isn't this the hotel? Hold on, let's confirm if he's really there, she suggested, disappearing for a moment. After what felt like an eternity, she returned, a smirk playing on her lips. They said they'll check it out for me first. We need to verify the facts, she announced. As we waited, about 10 anxious minutes passed by. When I received a call from my mother-in-law, the news was shocking. Brian, my husband, seemed to be spending the night at that hotel, and with another woman, no less. Despite the strict policies against such actions, the circumstances seemed to warrant an exception, my mother-in-law explained. She even disclosed the name of the woman Brian was with. I was taken aback when I heard the name. I knew her. She was actually a friend of mine, my coworker and friend Jessica, who worked in the same department as Brian. She had even been present at our wedding, delivering a speech. The revelation left my mother-in-law equally astonished. Furious, her face flushed bright red, my mother-in-law was ready to confront Brian then and there. However, I urged caution, suggesting we gather solid evidence first. We decided to hire a private detective. After that, I'm filing for divorce. I can't tolerate a man who cheats with my friend. I plan to seek alimony, so I apologize for any inconvenience this may cause you, mother-in-law, I explained. Don't worry about it. I'll give that idiot son of mine a piece of my mind. How dare he betray such a good wife? When he comes back, he'll get a thrashing, my mother-in-law declared angrily, her words offering me some solace. Feeling somewhat uplifted by her support, I began searching for a private detective. A relative of my mother-in-law recommended a reputable detective agency, and I promptly hired them. When I received the report, I couldn't help but laugh. It turned out that my friend Jessica had been posing as Brian's wife while they were away on location, 3 days before my scheduled discharge from the hospital. I dialed Brian's number, keeping it a secret that my mother-in-law was aware of the situation. How are you feeling? I inquired. I'm sorry, I've been too busy to visit. I'll definitely pick you up on your discharge day. Do you need anything? He responded. No, I'm fine. Sorry for bothering you while you're so busy. Apparently, my recovery is taking longer, so my discharge date has been extended. I'm just calling to let you know. I'm borrowing things like pajamas from the hospital, so no need to worry. Looks like I'll be discharged a week from now, I explained. Sorry for not being able to support you while you're so busy. Oh, could you withdraw money for the hospital bills? I don't have any cash on hand, so could you do it on my discharge day? I requested. I see, that sounds tough. All right, I should be done with my delivery in a week, so I'll go to the bank before picking you up. My mom's been worried too. She's caught a cold and feels bad for not being able to visit you. Brian lied effortlessly. Suppressing a laugh at his fabrications, I replied, Oh, is that so? Please tell mother-in-law to take care. Did you manage to inform the office? Thank you. Did they say anything about allowances? He asked, trying to keep the conversation casual. They did. I'll take care of the procedures. You just rest and recover. Hope you get well soon. All right, thank you. See you in a week then, I replied, ending the call. Already aware of Brian's deception, I had confirmed with the office before his call. Apparently, he had informed them that he was going on a trip and applied for my leave. As a result, my boss inquired about the trip and my well-being. After explaining my situation, my boss decided to visit the hospital immediately. Not only my boss but also the HR department came, revealing that I was entitled to sick leave benefits. It was then revealed that Brian had been out of touch for about a week, and he was also behind on his deadlines. The same was true for his mistress, who they couldn't reach either. This revelation shed light on a situation that had been ongoing for the past 6 months, finally coming to a head, prompting them to come and talk to me. I informed my bosses that I preferred they didn't mention the situation to Brian or his mistress until a week later. After that, they were free to impose any necessary punishment. Following the plan, I was discharged from the hospital. It appeared that Brian had submitted another application for my paid leave. His mother, my mother-in-law, received a call from him, stating that his business trip was extended. Despite my extended hospital stay due to my illness, he was prolonging his vacation with his mistress. It became evident that there was no love left for me, leaving me feeling saddened. Deciding to take my paid leave as initially planned, my boss assured me to take all the time I needed until Brian returned. My mother-in-law and I prepared ourselves to confront him. The day before I intended to inform Brian about my discharge from the hospital, I called him. "Hello, how's your mother doing?" I inquired. "I'm feeling good and I got discharged today. It was sudden, so don't worry about picking me up. I can pay with my credit card," he replied. "You're working today, right, Brian?" I pressed. "Yeah, I have a meeting soon and another one tonight, so I won't be home until late. Sorry," he said. "That's fine, don't worry about it. I'll take a taxi home," I assured him. Suppressing a laugh at the background noise of a shopping center announcement during his call, I calmly hung up the phone and activated the voice recorder. I had received word from the detective that Brian planned to go shopping today, so I deliberately called him during that time. Upon checking the voice recorder, Brian's voice and the background announcement were distinctly captured. Apparently, Brian had contacted my mother-in-law, claiming he was on vacation with a friend. He insisted it was a working vacation, a sort of half-truth, and mentioned I had given my approval, omitting the details of my hospitalizations to spare her worry. Brian's absurd excuses left me chuckling. According to the detective, Brian had boarded a late-night flight back. My mother-in-law and I laid out all the evidence, awaiting Brian's return. However, Brian called me with a different story. "Sorry, the meeting ran late, and I missed the last train. I'll be back on the first train tomorrow," he said. "Is that so? That's tough." "Got it. Sorry, I can't pick you up," I replied calmly before ending the call. After indulging in a 3-week affair trip, it seemed Brian still couldn't get enough. My mother-in-law was furious, but I found that my love for Brian had vanished entirely, allowing me to maintain composure during our discussion. The next day, Brian returned home looking exhausted, laden with souvenirs. "You went on a trip," I stated flatly. "I didn't hear about that," I said, puzzled. "Ha, didn't I tell you?" "Sorry, my bad. I got friendly with a client, and they invited me." "Business relationships matter, right?" Brian explained casually as he handed me a bag and followed me to the living room. "I'm home. Hey, what's up with you, Mom? You look scary," Brian said, grinning as he plopped down onto a chair. He seemed to believe his mother was on his side. However, as soon as he saw the documents laid out on the table, his face drained of color. Sitting next to my mother-in-law, I pointed at a photo. "Oh yes, you seem to have had quite the fun on your trip with Jessica, leaving your injured wife for 3 weeks. Were you in a honeymoon mood?" I asked pointedly. "What? What's this, Carol? Stop fooling around," Brian stammered, his face contorting in disbelief. Unfortunately, it wasn't a joke. I presented evidence from a private detective. "You were pretty careless, weren't you? Your dinner conversations were totally bugged. Staying at a hotel run by our relatives, you must have thought you wouldn't get caught." Brian's face turned even more shocked as he looked at his mother for help. "Mom, it was a lapse in judgment," he tried to explain. "A lapse in judgment that lasted 3 weeks seems a bit too long, don't you think?" His mother interjected with a cheerful smile. Brian, who had been hoping for help, was stunned. "Here, these are documents for a claim for damages and a divorce application. Fill it out now," I instructed firmly. Damages? Divorce? Carol, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. The one I truly love is you. Can't you forgive me? Let's start over, Brian pleaded. In response, I pressed a button on my phone, and the voices of Brian and Jessica flowed out. It was a conversation recorded by the detective, hinting at a divorce with me and a remarriage with Jessica. Brian's face turned even paler. It was just a spur-of-the-moment thing. I didn't mean it, Brian mumbled, looking desperate. I couldn't care less, really, I replied, handing him the documents and urging him to write. Please forgive me. I can't afford to pay any damages. Well, that's what happens when you splurge like that. Where did all that money come from anyway? I asked pointedly. Brian mumbled something incoherent, and I had a bad feeling about it. You didn't by chance use the living expenses, did you? I have been giving you money to pass on to mother-in-law. Did you? You've been passing it on to her, right? I asked Brian, expecting confirmation. However, the response I got wasn't from Brian but from mother-in-law herself. Living expenses? What are you talking about? I've never received anything like that, she said, seeming genuinely unaware. Confused, I turned to Brian. Hey, what's going on here? Explain it properly, I demanded. Mother-in-law, and I confronted Brian, who seemed to shrink under our scrutiny. I'm sorry, the living expenses, I used them for our dates, he admitted, his voice barely audible. I felt my already icy affection for Brian grow even colder. He had spent the almost $2,000 I had been giving him every month, all of it. I told you that money was for groceries, utilities, and to thank mother-in-law. That money was mine in the first place, I reminded him, my voice tinged with disappointment. I'm sorry, my salary alone wasn't enough, Brian offered weakly, but it was clear what wasn't enough. The designer items Jessica had. Surely, there must have been gifts from Brian. I swiftly raised my hand to reprimand him, but it was stopped by mother-in-law. Brian watched hopefully, still thinking mother-in-law was on his side. You can't, Carol. If you lay a hand, it'll be to your disadvantage, mother-in-law warned before turning to face Brian. Then, with calm and monotone demeanor, mother-in-law delivered her verdict. I've always thought the sillier the child, the cuter. I've spoiled you too much. Even with the bias, you grew up kind, and your father and I were so happy when you got such a good wife. But now, I'm cutting ties with you. Brian, stunned, tried to protest, but Mom, you're joking, right? Mother-in-law slapped away Brian's pleading hand and handed him a document containing a clause renouncing inheritance. Brian widened his eyes in disbelief, muttering, I can't believe it. It doesn't matter if you can't believe it. It's all true, mother-in-law stated firmly. Dejected and seemingly out of arguments, Brian signed all the documents presented. Afterwards, mother-in-law kicked Brian out. He had apparently been misusing company entertainment expenses and was claimed for reimbursement by the company. Brian ended up living in an apartment without a bath, forced into a poor lifestyle after paying alimony and facing reimbursement claims. I claimed alimony from his mistress, Jessica, who, as it turned out, was married. Her husband was away on business, so I contacted him through social media and claimed alimony. As a result, Jessica avoided divorce but had to quit her job, forced to live with her husband's family in a rural area without internet connection, where she was made to work from dawn till dusk. Having lost my parents early, I ended up being adopted by mother-in-law. Initially reluctant because of Brian's infidelity, mother-in-law eventually accepted, and we sold the house, buying a new one just for the two of us. I want to take good care of mother-in-law until the end.